what most founders find very difficult, and I think it's most leaders find really difficult, is the fact that aligning your behavior to your business values sometimes go against your personal values. And when you have 2 months runway and you have a big investor that comes and say, well, I give you the 3 million that you need to scale, but you have to do things our way. It's a very difficult decision. If you think about it, culture is how do we do things around here? It's not beer pong, it's not bean bags, it's not snacks. It's how do we do things around here? And it's working hand in hand with leadership teams to create the most effective culture possible so that you can use your resources the best way. Because startups are always constrained with resources, and if you improve productivity by 5-10%, then you've technically improved your runway by 5-10%. So that's a big difference.
Steph is a fractional head of people and a product-minded chief people officer who scales startups without the drama. Steph turns HR into a growth engine, skills-first hiring, stronger managers, and a clean people stack that actually ships results. From early-stage chaos to hypergrowth, Steph's the steady hand that's installing systems and rhythms that stick. Welcome to Frac, the podcast where top fractional leaders share their wins, struggles, and stories from the trenches. Hosted by Adir Ron. Welcome to Frac, the podcast where we dive into the world of fractional leadership, the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adir Ron, Fractional CMO. And my guest today is Steph Thommen. Hi, Steph.
Hi, Ron.
Thank you for joining me today.
A pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. So, Steph is a fractional head of people and a product-minded chief people officer who scales startups without the drama. Steph turns HR into a growth engine, skills-first hiring, stronger managers, and a clean people stack that actually ships results. From early-stage chaos to hypergrowth, Steph's the steady hand that's installing systems and rhythms that stick. So, welcome, and thank you for joining me today. And let's kick it off with a fun little icebreaker question.
Okay.
So, and I've been thinking. I always take some time to think of like a fun little interaction to kick off an episode, and I've seen this interesting discussion a few days ago on like emojis that encompass an entire situation and an entire unraveling catastrophes in one emoji. So can you think of a broken culture that you've experienced and describe it with an emoji? And which emoji would that be?
Ooh.
That's a hard one. I apologize.
I don't know. The one emoji would be the sick emoji. You know, the green one with the want to vomit. That's what broken culture make me feel like.
Okay.
And it's how, if you speak with the staff who work within a broken culture, it's often how they feel. They feel sick because they can't win. There's nothing they can do to win.
Interesting. I would imagine actually the dead one with the X's for eyes, or the dazed one with like the spiraling kind of spirals for eyes.
The one with the swear words as well. That's a good one.
It's a great one. Yeah, I've had that at a couple of places, unfortunately. So yes. All right. So we figured out our emojis. That's a great start. So Steph, tell us a bit about your journey into fractional head of people. How the Frac did you get here?
How the Frac did I get here? It's been a long and interesting journey. So I started in customer service and customer success, and I ended up leading teams in large call centers. And what I found within those call centers is the fact that the more rigid the structure, the less initiative you see in the team members. And that slows everything down because there's no initiative. The team members expect the management to solve everything where they could be solving things with the customers themselves. And that started a journey for me in understanding what makes people tick and how do you build a good team culture. And I've been going between being freelance or fractional to being permanent with businesses, startups. And when I join a startup, I get an interesting project, and sometimes they ask me to stay. And if I really like the project, I stay, and then I go back to fractional after a while. But
So it's kind of like in and out.
It's in and out, and I think I've reached a point where I much prefer being fractional.
Okay, that's good. Then you're at the right podcast.
So now I know exactly what I want to do. But it took a while. And my journey from CX to people has been, well, if I can create great teams, so like what I'm really strong at is creating great teams. And if I can create great teams in CX or in operations, I can do that for the whole business and have a great impact. So I worked for a startup called Nimbla. Sadly, they closed now, but I started in CX, set up all of their CX, and then moved into people as we scale, and I've stayed in people then. And it's working with the leadership to establish the right culture, which, if you think about it, culture is how do we do things around here? It's not beer pong, it's not bin bags, it's not snacks. It's how do we do things around here? And it's working hand in hand with leadership teams to create the most effective culture possible so that you can use your resources the best way. Because startups are always constrained with resources. And if you improve productivity by 5-10%, then you've technically improved your runway by 5 or 10%. Yes. So that's a big difference.
Okay, thank you for that. I think you mentioned kind of jumping in and out from like fractional engagements to like maybe taking on more permanent roles. Can we kind of zoom in a bit about kind of that moment where your first fractional gig, or kind of like that first stretch of time where kind of went from having a full-time job to considering fractional, going fractional, finding that first 1-2 customers, projects. How did that kind of go about, and kind of walk us through that journey?
That was so. I had been made. It was just after COVID, so 2021, late so, 21, early 22, and in 21 I was made redundant in February, and then made redundant in December. And I was just kind of, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going fractional, and I put it out to my network. And somebody who I worked with at Nimbla, actually, Phil, who has become a friend over the years, introduced me to a company called Chassis Autonomy. And they had a base in Sweden, and they wanted to scale their operations in the UK. So they asked me to come in, have a look at their culture. How do we communicate between the two countries when you have a team that's mostly remote and a team that's mostly on site? And so that was my very first client. And it was a little bit scary, well, quite a bit scary, because I left my job in early December. And then mid-January, I started doing like posting on LinkedIn and advertising myself and a website and all of that. And there was nothing, like crickets.
Sounds familiar, yes.
And I was going, well, I have a certain amount of savings, but I still need to keep the money coming in. And then Phil introduced me to Tommen, and I was kind of, yes. But that was just 1 day a week. So it was kind of, okay, this is good. It's great.
Great start.
It's not covering everything. And I kept on looking for people to work with. And I did a lot. I still do a lot of outreach on LinkedIn for founders, because it's founders I work with. And speaking with people who are in the same kind of fields that are interesting. And through that, I found my next 2 clients. So before that, I found another client. It was Phil's company who actually hired me to help them set up their culture because they just got started. So we did a culture workshop to get their purpose, vision, mission, decision-making framework together. And then I helped implement it within the business. And then the next 2 gigs were found through networking on LinkedIn. So finding those people, having a phone conversation, an online conversation with them. And then I was just, okay, I can recommend Steph for, and most of my clients have come through referrals. I do a lot of outreach. I speak with a lot of founders, but the most effective method for me has been referrals.
Interesting. I'm hearing that from I think literally every person that I had on the show so far, that the number one source is referral. But I am hearing more and more, especially recently, fractionals that are saying, yeah, we're doubling down on outreach. We're doing, I heard a few that are doing cold emails or cold calling, but I think most of them are just reverting to LinkedIn outreach.
Yeah.
And is that, how's that working? Out of curiosity.
I've got a love-hate relationship with it.
I totally relate.
Right? I love meeting with people. I love hearing what all the new techs and whatever founders, whatever startups is kind of, this is amazing that someone thought about it, learning about new problems and how they're getting solved. This is amazing. The sales bit is my big learning bear. I'm learning every day. I'm not great at it yet, but it is just learning every day. I'm lucky that a friend of mine is helping fractional people set up, and I took part into his course, and he has a lot of system that he shares with you and helps you set up your brand and all of that. So that was a big help for me. And at the same time, sales is still my bugbear. And as soon as I can, I will be outsourcing it because
yeah. Yes. Not fun, but a necessary evil.
Yeah.
I think. All right. So you mentioned culture workshop, and that's, I think that's interesting. One of my last gigs as a full-time CMO, I was a part of such a workshop. I was actually part of the team that kind of built and led that workshop together with our head of HR and then another person from the team. So it was a funny mix. It was like chief of marketing, VP of design, and head of HR that are doing a culture workshop together.
To work like that.
We were the ones who cared about it the most and wanted to push it. I'm wondering from your perspective, how do you kind of go about and set that up when you have a customer that says, this is what I want. I need to kind of double down on my culture. Maybe even, let me rephrase the question. So maybe even taking it a step back before we talk about the actual kind of workshop, which I would love to hear about. How does that engagement kind of looks like? Does a founder come to you and say, Steph, I need better culture? Or what's typically the ask that they come in through the door with?
The ask is usually my team is not working as well as it can.
Okay.
And when I ask more questions, what I find out is that they have people in roles, but because they're still fairly small, the roles are not well defined. They know where they want to go. They know what their goal is, but they're not well organized. And the culture workshop helps them think about their business in a slightly different way. And it's, as I said earlier on, is how do we work together? So when you have the founding team, 3-4 people, you can do marketing, I can do people. We have somebody who's going to do sales and somebody who's going to do product and dev. Usually that's, and even people comes a little bit later most of the time. I do my thing, we meet, we talk about it, and I go back, do my thing. But when you start scaling, when you start hiring more people, that very close-knit team where people know what they should be doing is not there anymore. There's more things that we need to work out for people to work together effectively. And so what I ask them is, okay, how do you work together now? What's working, what's not working? And how do you make decisions? Who is responsible for what? And what I usually find out is kind of, I'm responsible for this, this, and this. And then this person says, no, I'm responsible for that. And
sounds familiar.
There's a lot of confusion. So the culture workshop is to help them create that framework. And I use Simon Sinek's system of find your why. And
I love
so
it.
basically you start with finding your purpose and then your vision. So purpose is why are we here? And it's usually a goal that no one is ever going to achieve, but it's the
Yes.
great vision. It's amazing. The vision is, well, bring it back down a little bit. What is it that we are doing? And then the mission is how are we doing it right now over the next 2-3 years? How are we going to achieve the vision so that we can achieve the purpose? And once you have all of that with all of the material that you get from those three things, you can decide on what are the values of the business, because they usually fall from the values. And once you have the values, then you can answer the question, how do we make decisions? And with the decision-making framework, then you can say, okay, so you're responsible for marketing. Those are the 4 or 5 areas that where you're going to focus on, and this is how you make decisions. And you have some startups put a budget value saying you can spend up to 10,000 without asking for anything. If there is anything that concerns another department, you have to make the decision with them. If there's anything that goes over that budget, you have to make decision with the rest of the team. And that provides people with what I like to call it a playpen. It just says, this is my little box. I can play and do whatever I want in there. And if I want to play outside of that, I need to go work with somebody else. And from there, you can then build everything within the business, because everyone knows how to make decisions. Everyone knows what the values are. And I think Niem is probably the best company I've seen using their values. So we did that value workshop, and they were looking for investment. So Niem does green ammonia, and BP wanted to invest in them. They wanted to buy the technology. But BP's values don't align with Niem's values. And they refused a very, very large investment because they were not aligned.
Interesting.
That's how impactful it can be. And now they are growing, they're scaling. They've just released their first reactor, so like the proper full-scale reactor, shipped it to Australia. And it is just amazing how having that value focus helps you do a lot more with a lot less.
I remember when we were doing this workshop that one of the things that kind of guided us was I don't remember who said that principle, but it was very similar to what you said. It was values. Like, how do you know that you've picked the right mission statement and the right value? The right values be painful. If your values are kind of like bland and it's like,
integrity, trust.
Yeah, but like if you don't pick a value that like it's a hill that you will die on, so to speak. It's
exactly.
Like at some point during my company's life, I will come across a decision where money might lead me to one place, but my values will lead me to another place, and it will be a painful decision. But that's the value that I want, or at least that's the value that as a founder, let's move to third person, that's the value that as a founder you should pick. The one that's painful, because that's the one that defines your company's DNA and your company's culture.
Absolutely.
And have you had, so let's kind of continue and build on that. Have you had instances where you kind of did this process and then you realized, yeah, they're not going to do it. Like, these are not, they speak the speak, but they don't walk the walk. Like, I don't see how this founder, the CEO, or someone else, like from like upper management, is actually like going to live up to those values.
Quite a few times.
Yes, I was afraid you're going to say that.
But that's what you're saying, right? The challenge is when you found a business. When you're a founder, you're there, you want to solve a problem, and at the same time it's a business, you need to make money, and there's always the fear that you're going to fail, and you don't want to fail. Like that's the greatest pain you could feel is the failure of that business, because you're attached, it's your baby, you're attached to it. And when you have 2 months runway and you have a big investor that comes in and say, well, I give you the 3 million that you need to scale, but you have to do things our way, it's a very difficult decision. It's either you're going to feel like a failure because you didn't take that investment, and you have also the attachment to the team and the people who invested in you early stage, and it's kind of, you don't want to fail them, you don't want to feel like a failure, and you don't want to fail the people who are working with you. So it's a very difficult decision. That's one thing that sometimes makes people say, well, okay, we'll take that investment and we'll work it out. Right? We, as human, we have an optimism bias and think that, well, I can smoke 10 a day and it doesn't do anything to me, right? I'll be safe. It doesn't. It's the same kind of thinking. And there is the other thing is what most founders find very difficult, and I think it's most leaders find really difficult, is the fact that behavior, like aligning your behavior to your values, sometimes your business values sometimes go against your personal values. And that means doing some self-reflection work, means changing your behavior. And that's very, very difficult. Like no one changes unless they see the need to change themselves. So as a coach, I could tell you, well, this is what I see, and you can change this way, or this way. If you don't see the value in changing, you're never going to change. And that's usually the most difficult thing for founders, is having to self-reflect, realize the tension between the business need and the personal challenge, do that self-reflection, and then say, I need to change my behavior so that my business will benefit.
Yeah. And next year categories with us. And have you gotten into instances where, you were approached by a potential customer and then you kind of started the exploration and you're like, okay, no, this is not a founder I can work with? Like pushing back on a project because you felt, like it won't work?
I haven't, and at the same time, I hope I have learned and will do it in the future, because there has been a couple of engagements that didn't finish as I would have hoped, and where the implementing those changes were very, very difficult, and the changes didn't happen. So I failed in what I said I was going to accomplish, and they felt that they had failed as well. But there's been and it was early on in when I was more freelancing rather than fractional. There's been one engagement that I remember particularly, where I managed to get the team together. So I was still in CX. I managed to get the team together. And then when I spoke with the leaders around the business and say, this behavior across the business needs to change if you want CX to be successful. And that didn't happen. So we ended the relationship. And what happened is then that 3 weeks after I had left, 60% of the CX team had left.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a big, and I'd spent 9 months recruiting for that team.
Did the founder reach back to you after that?
No.
No, they were too prideful,
Never heard
I guess.
from them again.
Yeah, that sounds hard. But it was interesting. Kind of sidetracking. You said that was earlier when I was freelancing and not fractional, and I want to go back to that because I think some of the listeners or watchers will ponder on the difference. So how do you define the difference?
So freelance, I was full-time with the business for 6 months, and it was usually 6 months rolling contracts. So it's full-time with one business. As a fractional, I currently have 3 clients.
Okay.
And I am 1 day a week with each client. Well, 1 day a week with 2 clients, and there's one that's more ad hoc work. When they need me, I'm here, and I do the work for them. So freelance is more jumping from project to project, and fractional
But doing
is
one
very
at a
much,
time.
yeah. And fractional is embedding. I am part of the team. I am their head of people, chief people officer, people expert, whatever title they want to give me. I don't mind very much. But I am their people person, and I will help them develop their business and their culture in a way that will help them grow and scale.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Have you ever had someone reach out with like an emergency, everything's on fire situation where they're like, Steph, I need you yesterday. The building's on fire. Everyone's with the puking emoji. Come and fix this.
Yeah, I've had that a couple of times.
A couple of times. Okay.
And it's usually on specific issues. And that's why I started doing the power hours, where I jump on a call with the founder, or whatever, the leader who is experiencing the problem, and we solve the problem together. One of them was a team member who was regularly sick and not pulling their weight when they were there. So what we did is go back and work out what's the sick leave policy, what do we do, how do we support the team members, because the business really wanted to support the team members in being like healthy, have the time to sort their health issues, and then be able to contribute to the team. And so that really helped the business establish that structure. And the team member decided that they were going to leave because when there was a little bit of scrutiny into what they were doing, they didn't feel comfortable with that, so they decided to leave. And the other one was a client I speak with on and off quite regularly, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I got to get a call and say, look,
That's never a good sign.
They don't usually call, like, well, not that when it's a phone call.
Yeah, that's like really everything's on fire.
And they had hired someone who was supposed to start the next day, and realized that actually what they wanted to do with the role, that person wasn't the right person, and the role needed to change quite tremendously.
Yes. Okay, that's hard.
So things that happened in the business, they wanted to pivot a little bit, and they realized that role then wasn't relevant anymore, and the person couldn't fit in the new role, the new direction they were going into. And what we worked out is to call the candidate very early in the morning and offer them severance package, even though they hadn't started, to say, look, we're very sorry, we've messed up, but here is 3 months worth of money and a reference so that you can find something else.
That's generous.
It was very generous, and that's the kind of clients I want to work with, right? We made a mistake, we're going to fix it, and it's to the benefit of the business because it helped their reputation. So they worked in a small city in Denmark, and they are one of the main employers. So there are a lot of people who knows about them, and they know that the word is going to go around. So that benefits their reputation, and at the same time, the person wasn't left in the lurch without any money.
Exactly. I know a lot of businesses that would just say, sorry.
Bye.
Good luck.
And
maybe you quit your job for us. Maybe you turned down 3 other offers last week.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good luck.
Yeah.
We're a business. Our bottom line matters more than you.
Yeah.
I guess those are not the types of founders that you All right. Well, that kind of leads me to our next segment, though I think we touched on that a bit, but let's see if maybe we can find another one of your one of your most fracked up moments. So something that maybe, you mentioned that with all this, like a ton of the CX team leaving earlier in your career, but maybe something a bit more recent that comes to mind of a fracked up moment, something that didn't really work out as planned.
CEO sending me a list of people in WhatsApp. And
Okay.
I was kind of, what do you want me to do with that? I wanted to fire them. And it's kind of, well, why do you want me to fire them? If they're not doing So some of those people are very junior, and I'm pretty sure you never spoke with them. How do you know they're not doing their job? I spoke with people in the team, and they said they didn't like that person. And I was just kind of...
Breathe in, breathe out.
So I said, just leave it with me, and I will investigate with this people's manager, and I will understand what's going on, and we will do what's needed. So I went to all of the managers. I looked at the person's performance, how their goals were set, the feedback they got, and the majority of the staff were fairly new, hadn't had any training, and were fairly junior in their career as well. And so the team that had been there for a long time knew what to do, and they were just kind of, well, do this thing. It's kind of, well, I don't know how to do this thing. Can you teach me? And that hadn't happened. So I helped the manager put goals in place and a plan, and 3/4 improved their performance because they received the training, and then about a quarter had to leave because they were not performing. But that managing by hearsay, the mind-blown emoji is a good one.
Exactly. We'll call this the emoji episode, but yes. Wow. So 3/4 ended up staying.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. That is a fracked up moment. Thank you for that. That one's gonna keep me up at night. So let's switch gears and go into our quickfire round. So I'll ask you a few questions and just happy to hear your thoughts. And I'll start with a bit of a controversy. So frac or fiction? Fractional HR is just a fancy name for a recruiter.
Fiction.
Do you want to add a sentence to that?
So a fractional HR can do recruitment. They will add a lot more value if they don't only do recruitment. And you'd probably get a lot more value out of an agency, a recruitment agency, or an embedded recruiter, because I can do recruitment, but it's not my main skill. So it's a thing that I have done, and I happily do it quite regularly. And at the same time, I'm better at building teams. So I'm good at choosing the people, but all the admin that goes behind the recruitment, you need a specialist to be able to do that most effectively and actually source the right candidates and things like that.
Okay. It's a very solid answer. What is the one tool in your toolbox that you swear by?
ChatGPT, or else I use it now. The reason I'm saying this is, so Sana records all of my meetings. It helps me keep track of all the things I have to do. It helps me improve as well, because I can get it to look across all of my meeting and saying, what are the trends? How can I improve? So I use it as a coach as well. And whenever I'm working on a project, if I don't have a team with me, I use it to brainstorm initially. And then I have a better idea of where we can go before I take that to the teams I work with. So it's initial brainstorm. I get an idea of what we should be doing. Then I take it to the team and say, I'm thinking about that. How does that work for the team? And research as well. So when I need to understand, so we're having that problem, where does that come from? Is there psychology attached to it? is there research attached to it. So it helps me understand problems better, and so that I don't have to be on Google for days before I get the information I need. It just does all that in seconds.
Okay. What's your definition of a dream client versus a nightmare client? We kind of touched on that earlier, but let's recap that into
a dream client is a client who understands that putting their people first is going to benefit their business in the long run. It's like, to me, it's like building a house. You wouldn't build a house if you didn't have the foundations. The foundations is the frameworks that you need for your people to work together, and then prioritizing your people in every decision you're making. And once you have that in place, your people are going to do the job, and they will be doing the job much more effectively than if you just put a jumble of people together and tell them collaborate. Collaborate is a big word. What does that mean? How do we work? And a nightmare client is somebody who sends me a list of people and tells me you need to fire them.
Send you a list of people on WhatsApp with a fire emoji. Okay. Where do you see, and that's a big one, I know, but where do you see the future of Fractional?
I see that as the key to success for small businesses. And not only startups, it's all small businesses, because there are a lot of businesses that have like 30, 40 people who have a random operations person handle pretty much everything. And it might be fun and exciting if they are a generalist. And sometimes they will need the knowledge of a specialist. So if I take an office manager, for instance, they're going to organize the events, they're going to do the HR, they're going to do the managing the office, they're going to help people sort things out, do the contracts and all of that. Having a fractional person helps take all of the admin and organizing things away, so that the operations person can actually make sure that everything is working together the way it should. And it can give a small business access to marketing, or to more sales, or to a proper finance person, rather than trying to do your accounts at the end of the year and not being sure. Like my accountant fired a client recently because the client came to them with 2 bags full of receipts and told them
that feels very outdated.
If they'd had a fractional person doing their bookkeeping, like 1 day a month, their accounting bill at the end of the year would have been a lot less expensive. Exactly. And they would be saving a lot more money because they're managing their accounts better.
Exactly. Okay. That's an interesting perspective, and one that I don't hear often, because I think a lot of the fractionals that I've been talking to are very, very focused on tech startups. So that's kind of like a bit of a left field perspective, and I like that. Okay, so we're kind of gearing up to towards the wrap up of this episode, but I do have one final question, and that's one that I really, really like. One of the personas that I hope is listening to these episodes, to this podcast, is people who are, maybe still a bit earlier in their career path, maybe still full-time and kind of thinking about going fractional or aspiring to be like a fractional leader. If you could give one piece of advice to someone like that, what would that be?
Start building your brand before you go fractional, because you need that, what's the word? Social proof. And so what we said is most of the fractional contract we get is referrals. But right. When a friend of mine is telling John that they should contact Steph, what John is going to do is go on social, find Steph, see what she's saying before they're talking to her. So you need to have that social proof so that people can relate to you, and is kind of, well, okay, so Steph's done a podcast. She doesn't want to work with people who send a list of people to fire. That's not my kind of fractional person. You can make those, so you filter people and you also build your social proof and your expertise out there. The other one would be network freely. So find who you want to target and network with those people with no expectations. I'm doing that a lot, and I get a lot of very early stage founders saying, can we jump on a call? I have an idea. I need to brainstorm. And I do that with quite a lot of people because I'm interested on what people are thinking about. And it's building my network. And through that, I've had some referrals, introductions as well. So you're building your network that way by helping without expecting anything. And at the same time, you're learning. So that would be the two things. And when you launch, like in the market currently, you have 6 months to a year runway. If you're launching without any client lined up already, have 6 months to a year runway because there's going to be a lot of grind before you find clients.
That's a golden tip. And I think a really, really important one as well. Yeah. Especially if you want to kind of have a more structured and maybe saner first few months to a year of a fractional journey, because it does tend to be a bit of a roller coaster when you start out, at least in terms of like balancing client work and outreach and finding those initial opportunities.
Yeah. And it's also reminded, so what I learned as a freelancer, it's a little bit feast and famine. So the way I do it now is I have 3 to 4 days of client work, and then 1 day where I'm going to do all of my outreach and all of my connecting and meeting with other people. So that instead of having up and down, I still have up and downs, but they're not as big.
Kind of flattening the graph in a good way.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are fantastic tips.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the episode. But before we wrap up, Steph, if anyone wants to reach out, so obviously I'll make sure your LinkedIn is in the show notes. So anyone who wants to reach out will and can find you. Is there any specific, so again, we talked about if you're a founder that plans on dropping a list of people you want to fire on WhatsApp at 9 p.m., then Steph is probably not the person to reach out to. But is there a specific kind of profile that if you're a founder listening and you have this challenge, Steph is the person to reach out to?
Yeah, so it's startups that it's post-seed gearing to Series A usually. So when you're starting scaling, because what happens is when you're starting scaling, you're bringing a lot more people in, and that starts changing the culture of the business. So if you want to maintain effectiveness and the culture of your business at the same time, is just before you start hiring, I'm a good person to call.
Okay. I can say that I've been in a lot of those stages in different companies, and that's definitely a stage where I wish I had someone like you to talk.
It's when things just
would have saved me a lot of growing pains. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps up our episode for today. So if you're listening, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you, first of all, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment, share the episode with a founder or a fellow fractional. And Steph, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for everyone listening. I look forward to hearing from you.
Same here. Thank you.
Bye.